Well, morning, everyone. And it's a delight and an honor to speak to this distinguished audience. Alex, thank you so much for the kind introduction. You know, I might disappoint the audience, you know. And usually my talk on China takes about 2 or 4 days, you know. And so I did prepare my own PPT. So I'm responsible for whatever I say, you know. But the biggest risk and challenge is how could I share the idea with you in 20 minutes, you know. Let's try to do that. And I would like to have an overview of where China has been coming from since 1978. And after that, I will share with you my personal view about the potential global implication of China's transformation. I even do not represent our school, okay, so my personal view. China did well for the past 30-some years. According to Alumnis medicine, his study commissioned by OECD, China's shares global GDP was about 30% in 1820. So we came down all the way to 1.76% in 1978. And Deng Xiaoping made a trip to Shenzhen city neighboring Hong Kong. And one of the biggest contribution Deng did then was put a stop on ideology debate. Is the famous theory of black cat, a white cat, as long catching mice is a good cat. It took a person of his caliber to say that without getting into trouble, you know. So then, and also in 2001, China's accession to WTO was also indispensable, essential for China's economic progress. 2009, China overtook Germany as the largest exporting nation. In 2010, China surpassed Japan as the number 2 in nominal GDP. And last year, China became the largest trading nation in commodities. Since 2008, China's contribution to economic growth has been undisputed number 1. In 2008, China contributed about 40%. In 2009, globally reduced by 1.1%, China was 8.7%. One might argue without China's contribution to global economic growth, we could have had a global depression. So the significance of that cannot be understated. And that's how it stands now at size of GDP. Despite all the huge progress we have had, you can come up with 20, 30 limitations of Chinese model of development, you know. For example, we have a commodity strategy. We tend to compete in price. We don't know how to compete in value. We're reasonably good at imitation. We're not good at all in innovation, at least for the past. One reason is you don't need to innovate to become a billionaire in China. Why innovate, you know? It's not wise to innovate, actually, you know. Keep on copying. Keep on becoming billionaires, you know. And you're happy with that, you know. So sometimes governments, oh, you got to innovate, you know. The wise people will choose not to innovate, to copy, and they win. And many of the cost of products, made in China products, not fully incorporated. One most significant item is environmental cost. It costs a lot of money to clean up the environment in China, for those who have been to China. For those who have been to Beijing, you can smell the pollution, you know. And we have a fine tradition keeping in the family, keeping everything in the family. That will pose problem for leadership succession. You know, one structural problem for Chinese way developing economy is the first level distribution, the entrepreneur, roughly taking 80% of the total wealth created, leaving 20% to be shared by 100,000 employees. So the inequality is created in the first level distribution. And in China, the social program, not strong. And then the redistribution at the percentage GDP for China is among the lowest among any major economy. At third level distribution, the culture giving back to the community. For 2012, the philanthropy giving in China was 0.18% of GDP of China. Compared with the US in 2012, it was 2% of GDP. I was privileged to sit in board of United Way, the largest charity organization in the US. I witnessed generosity of American people. I mean, we're falling far behind. So we really messed up the major way. The first level distribution messed up, second level distribution, the third one. So the issue gets more complicated. And that's the reason why China is the only country where we spend more money on maintaining stability than national defense. And the issue gets more complicated, actually. Okay. And of course, we did well in terms of generating number of billionaires. And according to the British guy, Hu Run, who followed the wealthy people in China for the past 10 or 20 years, according to his recent estimate, the number of billionaires in China, US dollar terms, could be more than that of US already. But we have very limited progress in developing institutions like IBM, GE, Citibank. So when you have this all-family business, some SOEs, we don't have this, modern corporations, which are so essential for the success of US and Japan. And they're so crucial for creating middle class as a majority of the society. So the ecosystem enterprise in China is not very healthy. A privatization of SOEs will not help very much. If all family controlled, private, duopoly, monopoly can be equally dangerous. May not be conducive to reform and opening up. So sometimes we get to utopia when we come down to privatization. They can be a powerful force against reform, opening up, more so than SOE, because my own money, not a state money. Think about it, okay? A Chinese company didn't do well in value capturing. Look at iPhone. We got the Foxconn got $8 for every phone, iPhone 5. I mean, for every dollar Chinese company makes, we need to make $10 for the US companies. Okay? And you look at every sector, roughly the same. The Chinese company got 35 cents of each Barbie doll. I mean, in Foxconn, you have like 13 people killed by suicide in 2 months' time. It's really a sweatshop. To me, we're just domestic helpers for the US economy. Essentially, we deserve a thank you note from President Obama. Great job. Yes. Don't accuse us of being a currency manipulator. How much you can manipulate? 0.35 cents, okay? So every Chinese New Year, we need a thank you note. Great job. Free American people up doing all the creative job. Value added, high value added, all the stuff like that. And to be fair with the Chinese, okay. Well, global implications. There's so many, and there's something there's like 7, 8 items, and I can share with you. The first one, I think China contributed to the diversity of the models of development. Because Confucius has a very important notion of diversity is a precondition for harmony. So Confucius never believed in uniformity. He believed that diversity is a precondition for civilization to advance. So I have a lot of respect for Professor Fukuyama. But nobody from China dares to write a book called End of History because we have a long history. You know what I mean? Okay. Nobody dares to write a book kind of end of history, whatever things you're talking about. So China contributed to this argument about end of history debate. So we contribute in diversity. And to me, China has combined neoliberalism, started with Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and together with state capitalism. I don't agree with some assertion that China is purely a state capitalism. Yes, China has a strong element of state capitalism. The role played by government allocating resources, the monopoly of SOEs in 7 sectors, dominance in 20-some sectors. Yes, 80% of stock exchange capitalization in Shenzhen and Shanghai are owned or controlled by the state or SOEs. But 60% of GDP of China last year was purely from purely private companies, 60%, far higher maybe than Singapore. than the States, for sure, than France, than Italy, than any of the European countries, for sure. The private sector created 80% of jobs in China, 80%. The private sector created 90% of new jobs, 60% of GDP, 80% of jobs, over 90% of new jobs. So the private sector is far more prominent in China than you see in any major economy. Look at the data. So I would say China succeeded despite of the state capitalism, not because of state capitalism. The private sector has outmaneuvered many kinds of discrimination you can think of. 12 years ago, the private companies, no trading rights, no access to banking credit, no possibility IPO. This is only 12 years ago. Even today, they still have many, many discriminations against them. And you can see the possibility of corruption in the old system, because according to ideology regulations, very limited room for private sector to play. If you go with all the rules, you pretty much kill the economy of China. Yes, you just go read the book, you follow all the books, you know, and then there's virtually limited possibility for private sector to play. So you got to give some gray area for them to grow. That's the essence of China's economy. Of course, we need a whole new regime now, because the status of private sector is better recognized. So you can go by the rule, with the rule. Different system, you have different situation, even for corruption time. And so I see China as a combination of neoliberalism and state capitalism. And also the limitation of some social democracy, as you see in Europe. So this is my bold prediction. For the future, I see economies like China. In 2006, I got a food poisoning in Paris. I was hospitalized. I stayed in hospital for 2 nights. When I was checking out of hospital, they told me it's free. I was so shocked. I said, free? In Beijing, we have money, we cannot go to hospital, you know. In Paris, this beautiful hospital, I stayed for 2 nights, I have all the cards to pay, they say it's free. I said, oh, I really love socialism, by the way, you know. So that's the starting point. I try to figure out what the heck is socialism, what the heck is capitalism. I use 4 criteria. Universal health care, world class. Second one, your kids can go to college free, whole thing paid by government. Number 3, redistribution as a percentage of GDP. Number 4, the Gini coefficient, less than 0.35. You know, then only capitalist country in Europe is UK. US is more capitalistic. I don't want to say anything about China. You see the data. Okay. China, US, too much inequality. We need to move to the middle. China, US really together in that category. Every measure. Some of the European countries, too many social programs, too costly. Socialism, more like luxury products. Sometimes not everybody can afford it, you know. So they need to move to the middle. So I see the great convergence to the middle with diversity. I see that coming in 10, 20, or 30 years. Okay, that's my prediction. Yeah. So far, so good. I made a prediction in 2009. So far, I'm so lucky for the US and China going that direction. And second implication, China has really set a great example for economic openness. And I have many data for that. For example, yes, trade as percent of GDP, China is the second highest, only after Germany, far higher than those of Japan and the US. China is export-led, but very few people notice vast majority of export from China are provided by foreign companies, foreign investment. That's one and only globally. Export from US by US companies. Export from Japan by Japanese company. Export from China, over 50% was by foreign companies. In 2012, the first year, the contribution by foreign company in China was less than 50%. That's very unique globally. Secondly, China's only economy, major economy, not being dominated by any model. You see Samsung doing so well. $30 billion US sales in China. $30 billion US export from China. You see Volkswagen, you see Toyota. You see US, you see dominant American model. UK is a British model. Korea, purely Japanese model, purely Korean model. Only China, every model is doing so well, so well. Cisco, American company, has a 70% of China's internet infrastructure market. The Chinese company, Huawei Technology, have difficulty sending dollar into US because of national security. Give me a break, you know. This is the KFC, 51% of global revenue. American technology company, Qualcomm, 50% of global revenue coming from China. And you know, China is far more open than you think when I look at the data. You go to Walmart, go to Carrefour in China, you see very few Chinese brands, you see global brands. If you have a chance to visit the Japanese supermarket, very few foreign brands. If you might have Korean friends, you know, I mean, virtually no foreign brands in Korean supermarkets. So Chinese economic openness is understated. Chinese economy succeeded because it's open. I think it's sometimes far more open than the US economy. US need to learn from China. Economic openness, okay. Actually, I look at the history. Every dynasty, when China was open, China did so well. So, you know, Tang Dynasty, we have 500 foreign citizens serving high-ranking officers in China, including Prime Minister. Head of the National Library was Japanese. So we were far more open than it is today. Okay, we did well, every dynasty, okay. And the third point is, I think it's time to think about what's next for political system, social contract, because I see a strong limitation of Western democracies. Sovereign debt, myopic behavior, leadership deficit, and you know, not like President Xi and who, like, you know, for President of China, you have to spend 5-10 years remote area of China to qualify. You just cannot go there and make speeches. You go there, stay 5 days, 5 years, 10 years, in the poorest region of China, serve your due, head of village, commune, county, vice mayor, and you know, I mean, that experience, the diversity experience, rank by rank, so essential. This is Confucianism, actually. Okay, not communism. Okay, it's Confucianism. Okay, rank by rank, so important. You know, and then, so of course our political system have many limitations as well. I mean, the government is too powerful. You know, corruption, rising income wealth inequality, reduced social mobility, all coming from that. Actually, the money and power going together is a fundamental challenge for any political system. We don't have a solution yet. So I'm not saying we have a better system, but do not write a political system completely off. Okay, that's what I want to say. There's some positive elements. Okay, and another notion, unity of man and heaven. I really like that, but because today, if sustainability is the key issue facing humanity, we may have to redefine the relationship between humanity and nature. In Western civilization, humans very high in priority. Man is measure of all things. Okay, but the notion from our ancestor, unity of man and heaven, may be very relevant for future sustainability discussion. We don't practice well, by the way, you know, because you can see China, you go to China, you see that. But this notion, unity of man and heaven, I think to me far more relevant, far more advanced than the notion man is measure all things. You know? And this Confucius notion, harmony with uniformity, may be relevant for constructing a new form of global governance. Today, economy, companies very global, governance very local. We do not have an effective global governance. That could be a great recipe for great disaster to come. But you know, when US said yes, nobody could say no. That time is over. We have to figure out a better way of governing this global economy somehow, some way. Okay. Dynasty cycle. I learned from China. Every 300 years, a dynasty change because the money and power are going together until it's totally out of control. We had a big bang. Okay. So US has yet to complete first cycle yet. You know, don't jump the gun too fast. You know, you have to wait for the time to kick in. You know, you see the concentration wealth. And, you know, don't jump the gun too fast, okay? Because money and power always go together. always do. You know, I was having a lot of hope in the U.S. system, but my hope is fading because look at the Gini. You know, look at the concentration wealth now. And as I hope, I think together with ASEAN and India and you know, Korea and Japan, I think we should make a contribution to not only this technology, but also to solving some of the global problem, you know, most the pricing problem. I think it should be a starting point of two-way traffic rather than just the one-way. Since Renaissance time, much of the solution coming from the West. East has been playing a supporting role. That must be changed in the positive sense. We should do our share, not competing for the spotlight, but it's a matter of our duty to do our share. That's very important. You know, I think we have enough wisdom from our ancestors to contribute to that. The last point I would like to share with you is the concern I have. Actually, that's one reason why I introduced humanity to our business curriculum in 2004, because I was extremely concerned about lack of long-term consideration in any system in Western democracy, 4 years a cycle. All the business school stuff we teach, you know, present value, 10, 15 years. So collectively, if not a too strong statement, there's virtually no elements of long-term consideration anywhere, political, economic, East, West. We have so much pride in our system. We may be going down the hill together. I'm serious about that, because the climate change is one symptom of this lack of long-term consideration. I think it's about time we always need to think about what's next, to instill a long-term element of consideration in the political economic system. Democracy, the stuff we teach in business school, may spell the end of humanity. I'm not scaring you, okay? So short-term in consideration. And of course, I mean, our system, 5 years a term, 10 years, okay? It's still short-term, not long-term. So we need to work together. So this is what I coined as a collective myopia humanity. We really need to worry about that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Are we on? Yes. Professor, thank you for the 30,000 feet view on this huge topic. I wish we could have more time, but I want to bring our time to the relevancy to this room, which is China-ASEAN partnership. Could you share with us very, very briefly? You just talked about the forthcoming expected transformation and changing from export-led to domestic-led economy and so on. How do you see the opportunities and challenges between China and ASEAN in the next maybe 5 to 10 years?
Well, you know, it takes at least an hour or so to explain the future of China's economy. But I'm positive about, very optimistic about future of China's economy, because I've been among the most optimistic group of people. If you go back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, every time I underestimated the strength of China's economy. That's what I'm saying. If you think about it, you go back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you know. And for the future, you see urbanization rate only about 53%, far below the 80% of US, 85% of Brazil. You look at service, 40-some percentage. If you see China already the largest market for many segments. And if you talk about deregulation, a key element of China's economic advancement has been with deregulation. Look at the financial sector, look at telecom, look at education, look at the media, look at the culture, creative industries, look at the sporting industry, look at number one sector in the US, healthcare, 16 to 19% of GDP of the US. For China, only 5.3%. So the Chinese government can grow the economy all the way from 6% to 12% if they want to. They have a lot of instruments to play. Deregulations may be enough. You don't need innovations to grow the economy. But of course, the calculation gets complicated. It used to be 8% generating 8 million new jobs. But today, you generate 8 million new jobs, the faster economy grows, more inequality, possibility for instability, and stress on the environment. So I'm optimistic about the future Chinese economy. And I think that will be a great opportunity for ASEAN, so especially China already has a free trade deal with ASEAN. And given the nature of China economy being so open, I believe it continue to be open. And then that will spell great opportunity for ASEAN as well.
Professor, thank you. I read from the data, the list of your alumni, mostly simply put, the who's who in China's business, the Jack Ma and the likes. How do you see the potentials for your alumni, meaning the Chinese private sector, to work together with the ASEAN's private sector? What should they be doing?
Well, I'm optimistic about the next generation in the sense that the Chinese students studying abroad represent by far the largest body for any major country. 1/3 for Australia, 20%, 25% for UK, 70% foreign students in Japan coming from China. So, and also many wealthy people migrating overseas. That could have great positive effect on future of China, because I see the kids of this rich family go attend a top school in many countries around the globe. So this value integration for the next generation will be much easier for this generation. So the significance of this rich people migrating overseas cannot be discounted. It could be maybe far more important than Lenovo buying IBM PC unit, Li Shufu buying Volvo cars, okay? So I'm positive, because they're going to be far more global than my generation. They're far more global, of course, than the generation elder than me. So that's the key to the future. And then we'll have many students studying Singapore as well. And Malaysia, we'll give you a talk. I see many Chinese students studying Malaysia as well. So that's very unique for the Chinese. Will spell well for future of China.
Well, we're happy. We are happy to be delighted to be at least the young at heart, to be your to be your future students. Anyway, I want to open up the floor for any questions. We have maybe 2-3 minutes. To who wants to take this golden opportunity to share with Professor Xiang? Please. Otherwise, you have to pay for his private jet.
So it's nap time, maybe.
Anyway, so let me conclude by asking you one relevant question, Professor. You talk about the younger generation. I think it's quite relevant, and specifically the diversity issue in Asia. I don't know about exactly the situation in ASEAN. Is so important, meaning the balance, the gender balance, and the gender balance, or the percentage on the boards of companies. We had a little conversation last night with Nasia and some of the guests at the dinner last night about this diversity issue. It is an important issue, and for our next generation. How do you see China, in particular, ASEAN's second generation, should work together to leave this barrier? Thank you.
I mean, for the future, it's so global. I think we have to leverage diversity as a strategic asset rather than liability. First time when I was in Moscow, this was 2006, I saw the slow motion of life. In China, time is money. In Russia, at least in Moscow, it seemed to me time was unlimited. They did everything the slow way. And it's a great contract. And then even you go to subway in Moscow today, there's virtually very limited advertising. The volume traffic so high. And so the lack of commercialism. And then they tend to appreciate the slow way of life. I think that's fundamentally different from, at least we Chinese, the way we live, our space of life. That difference may be essential for Russia to continue to develop great ballet dancers. I couldn't understand why a high school math teacher could spend years calculating the orbits for synchronized satellite. Our great math teacher of high school, they're so busy tutoring, they have no interest in calculating anything else, So what I want to say is, it's so globalized. We need people lead a different way. That's coming from Confucius. In Chinese, it's called 和而不同. Diversity is precondition for civilization to advance. We should promote diversity. We should let people live different way. That might be essential for different talents to emerge, for civilization to advance, okay? We have too much attention to economics, business, trade. Those are important. We have limited attention to civilization now. I mean, that's a so essential element of our humanity. Please do promote diversity, different way of living, so essential for the future humanity.
Very good, thank you. Okay, yes, please.
Yes.
Dr. James? We spoke on this last night. Huh? Okay.
Professor, I think that was quite an outstanding presentation, which you also included the philosophical aspect. I think the whole region is growing, wealth creation is thriving. We often think that we need one more generation or two more generations of peace. Now, Confucius advocate harmony. The relationships are in harmony. It breeds growth and it breeds prosperity. I was wondering if you might comment what your ideas would be for ASEAN and China and for the region to have more harmony and more peace, given that there's so much tensions around, which definitely would not be good for our next phase of development. Thank you.
Good question.
Yes, I've been a student of China business and economy for 20 years. I'm not an expert of foreign policy, but it's my personal view. A few things. Number one, the Chinese culture, predominantly by Confucianism, in philosophy, we did not believe in anything that is universal. That's a fundamentally different from the U.S. view. U.S. think is the best system, so everybody should be copied, followed, you know. Even when China was at its peak of civilization, China never wanted to impose a political system, economic system, anyone, because it didn't believe every country should have the same system. So that's very important. So China has no incentive to impose its political system, its economic, anything to anyone, okay, number one. Number two, historically, as a Han Chinese, you know, 90% of the Chinese population is Han, I'm one of them. I have nothing against the minority. I really cherish the minority. But as a Han, we see our history in this way. We either were invaded by the minority from the north, like the Mongol people, the Qing dynasty, you know. After 1840, we were invaded by the foreign powers, starting with the British and Japanese. So that's our way looking into the history and global view. So we have been sort of a victim somehow, being invaded by minority from the north, and most recently by foreign powers. You know. Number three, China. The reason why China succeeded is the peace for the past some 30 years. If no peaceful environment, there's no way China could get whatever it is today. By 2049, if everything goes well, GDP per capita of China will be half of the US then. And China is the economy most dependent on global trade. And China, so critical dependent on importing energies from outside. So for anyone to commit a crime, you need to have some incentive. Give me one. Why China would like to have a military conflict with anyone? Why China have no incentive to ensure a safe passage of sea lanes? China is critically dependent on that, okay? So I had an opportunity of meeting up so many people in China. By and large, to me, Chinese maybe more emphasis on wine dining, you know, and golf recently, you know, and then I see this country definitely not like the U.S. You know, they have global ambitions, which is right, by the way, you know, they're positive and taking on global responsibility. And China never been a global power, you know, even 7 voyages around the globe in Song Dynasty, we were a regional power. So we never consider truly a global responsibility, taking care of this, taking care of that. So you have to drag China into this, given the fact China is so much integrated with global economy. That will take time to change. So right now, U.S. think China being assertive. China think U.S. is behind all the potential conflict, you know. I mean, so this is two fighting, like, you know, so I don't know. But as a Chinese, I truly believe China is a peace-loving nation. I met up so many people.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.